DVB, Digital Fast.
Hello and welcome to the DVB English News. I'm Nora. Joining me today is Khin Ohmar, a Myanmar human rights activist and founder of the civil society organization Progressive Voice. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Recently, you've been advocating with the ASEAN for Myanmar. How did you advocate on behalf of Myanmar?
Actually, I have been advocating to the ASEAN for democracy in Myanmar for decades, really, for over 2 decades now. But of course, with the most recent crisis since 2021, I have tried a lot more constantly, I would say. But it's not only me and my organization. The way how we advocate is we advocate together collectively and coordinatedly with among the Myanmar civil society organizations, human rights groups, women's groups, youth, and also the civil society from the ASEAN and also international. So we always come together with the collective voice, but that voice is something that we reflect of what the people from the ground are needing, asking, or experiencing. So usually our networks in Myanmar, the civil society organizations or community-based organizations, including like the recent earthquake humanitarian frontline responders. We work with them. So basically, these groups on the ground in the country are with the Myanmar people, working with and working for, and they witness the people suffering. They hear what is happening and what also people are needing, what are the needs people are needing. So basically, we always come up with the collective statement, open letter, or position papers that we propose to the ASEAN. Usually, we don't only tell the ASEAN the problems the people are facing, but we tell them the solutions our Myanmar people are trying so hard on the ground. But we also give the ASEAN itself pragmatic solutions, such as, for example, like when it comes to the earthquake situation, we tell them that they need to actually, and in order for their earthquake relief effort to be effective and reach to the people in need, they need to work formally and collaborate with the NUG and the EROs, and also directly support the local humanitarian frontline responders, bypassing the Myanmar military junta who has been manipulating, obstructing the humanitarian aid and even weaponizing the aid. So like these kind of suggestion or the recommendations or the solution that we propose to the ASEAN. For example, another major proposal that we made to the ASEAN that they are still considering until now, which is very frustrating. For example, like we told them since 2021, 2022, when they started appointing the ASEAN Special Envoy, we told them that ASEAN Special Envoy should not be rotating based on the annual ASEAN chairmanship. It should be at least 3-year terms so that the ASEAN Special Envoy can really effectively address the crisis. But the ASEAN must formally and officially engage with the legitimate stakeholders or the legitimate representatives of the Myanmar people. That includes the NUG and the EROs. But like again, these are not like a euphoria kind of suggestion. These are the practical suggestions that we propose to them. So that's how we advocate. We will go. Sometimes we will go ask for a meeting. We will meet with them. Sometimes they will invite us so that we can go and engage with them and exchange those ideas and opinions, and then see how we can come to be on the common ground, which is until now has been very difficult.
Has ASEAN Special Envoy been engaging with Myanmar stakeholders?
Yes. The current chair is, of course, Malaysia. So the special envoy is the Malaysia ambassador or the diplomat who has been appointed as the special envoy. So the ASEAN special envoy from Malaysia has been also engaging with the Myanmar stakeholders. And the previous special envoys, like last year was Laos. As far as I remember, the Laos special envoy didn't really engage as much as the Malaysia is doing now, or as much as Indonesia did during their chairmanship in 2023. But I think the challenge that we're having is that these engagements from the special envoy need to be really consulted, and also the modality needs to be very solution oriented, where the safe space is provided for the Myanmar stakeholders. The safe space is provided where the ASEAN Special Envoy will really delve into the deep discussion with the stakeholders for the solution, rather than how ASEAN see the solution for Myanmar that he is bringing to the Myanmar stakeholders. He should be listening more from the Myanmar people and try to put them himself in the shoes of the Myanmar people in this and under the military's violence, and see these pragmatic solutions that Myanmar people are working themselves and proposing to the ASEAN, how he can facilitate for the ASEAN to actually work on those solutions. I think that's something that I really think that he should step up to look into that step. There are so many recommendations have been given from the Myanmar stakeholders. I'm sure from the political stakeholders like NUG and EROs have given their own, as much as we as the civil society has been given both publicly and privately. And all of these solutions should be already put on the table together in face-to-face meeting and really discuss, okay, what are the pragmatic way that the ASEAN can really address this crisis effectively, right? And then especially now after 4.5 years, the 5-point consensus, whether they like it or not, has failed for the people of Myanmar. The 5-point consensus has failed on addressing the crisis. So I think the pragmatic, logical next step for the ASEAN is to see, yes, ASEAN 5-point consensus is something as agreement that they need to abide by and hold on to and make reference to. Okay, that's fine. But the 5-point themselves, the 5-point consensus themselves are not working on the ground, because the very main perpetrator of the Myanmar crisis, the Myanmar military, is totally disregarding, right? So in that particular situation, the ASEAN needs to be able to bypass those 5-point consensus, go beyond and see what are the real solutions that Myanmar people are proposing that ASEAN can really accommodate. I think that's the step is needing, which I'm hoping ASEAN chair Malaysia has only 5 more months to finish its chairmanship term, which I'm hoping that at least some of those practical steps that Malaysia will be able to make a decisive, decisions for the ASEAN, I hope.
In your writing, you have described Malaysia as a savior for ASEAN's credibility in Myanmar. Do you think it has led to a more people-centered approach to Myanmar?
No, not yet. Not yet. ASEAN just claimed last year in October, saying that it will be Myanmar-led, Myanmar-owned process. But we propose that Myanmar-led, Myanmar-owned needs to be interpreted in a very clear way of what ASEAN means. So we have interpreted for them that Myanmar-led, Myanmar-owned process should be Myanmar people-led, Myanmar people-owned, Myanmar people-centered. Like you said, has there been Myanmar's the people-centered approach that ASEAN is taking? So far, not yet. The ASEAN Special Envoy engagement with the stakeholders themselves need to become more formalized, which is not yet at this point. So the people center, what that means is that people who themselves are really sharing everything of what they are doing, such as how they are addressing the humanitarian crisis, for example, or how they are building the blocks of the federal democracy for new Myanmar, right? Like what the Karenni people are doing in the Karenni, or what the people in Kodulai are doing right now, for example. The women are doing, and the youth are trying. So these are the things that need to be that need to be seen as the people-centered solution. And that is something that ASEAN still doesn't seem to really grab on it or recognize and or give the recognition yet. And I think that is a huge mistake or a weakness, major weakness in the ASEAN's current approach to Myanmar crisis.
In the coming months, Malaysia will begin the handover process of the ASEAN chairmanship to the Philippines, as Myanmar will not chair ASEAN in 2026. Can we expect any progress from Malaysia, or do we have to wait for Manila?
It really depends on, like I was saying, like it really depends on how Malaysia really want to use up the next 5 months effectively, also for their own political legacy. Yeah, because Malaysia is the country who accepted the previous military regime of Myanmar, General Tan Swie regime, who came without, through the election, right, which was illegitimate military junta. They were the one who accepted Myanmar into the ASEAN. So yes, I can imagine of how Malaysia feels more responsible within the ASEAN, that like how they should try to resolve the Myanmar crisis. But I think the challenge is that they keep the whole ASEAN, including Malaysia, they are so focused on this state-centric approach, meaning like they differentiate or they equate the Myanmar state sovereignty with whoever is sitting in Naypyidaw, which is in the reality is very wrong in context of Myanmar, because the Myanmar military is still in Naypyidaw. However, there are revolutionary forces also in Naypyidaw, you see. Then also the country's territorial control has a vast majority of the country's territory is already under the control or administration of the revolutionary forces or the resistance movement, NUG, and the EROs. So basically, Myanmar sovereign state cannot be only equated with who is sitting in the Naypyidaw, buildings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think this is something Malaysia needs to be very pragmatic, and they need to have a political courage. If they want to show their leadership, if they want to show that they were able to do something for Myanmar to take the next step, at least, if not totally resolved of the crisis yet, what they need to do is in the next 5 months, they need to really sit down with the legitimate stakeholders from Myanmar, where the people actually gave the vote in 2020, where the ethnic communities gave their consent for their representation in the political process, such as like the NUCC or the like a joint coordinating body, like a multi-ethnic councils. So these are the bodies that are actually being like they are the ones shaping the new federal democratic Myanmar future. Yeah. So ASEAN needs to really sit down with, the Malaysia. So the next 5 months will run so fast. So if ASEAN is not having a political courage or courageous enough to take that next step, I think I can see Malaysia will end up not having a real progress on the ground, as that they will just pass on their chairmanship to another country and that's it, What they will probably claim is what Indonesia did. Indonesia did claim at the end of their chairmanship, saying that, we have held over 180 meetings with the stakeholders, and we have engaged with the stakeholders. But that is not the progress. The progress has to be a match with how the needs of the people on the ground are being responded. So the Malaysia cannot just end their chairmanship saying that, we have held more than 200, 300 meetings with the Myanmar stakeholders. That is not the progress at all, which is, in fact, that's the very reason I said the Malaysia should be the savior, or the Malaysia plays a very important role to ensure that very little dignity or the credibility left within ASEAN in responding Myanmar crisis. It is in hands of Malaysia right now how they can save the very little dignity or the credibility that ASEAN has left so far, and which is very worrying because 5 months will fly so fast.
Mm-hmm. In our previous interview, you mentioned how regime weaponized humanitarian aid. Now that 3 months have passed since the March 28th earthquake, has there been any change?
So including like our organization, and there are many civil society and community-based groups, frontline humanitarian responders in the country are working together. Through the border channels, we've been collaborating very closely and very effectively. As much as we know, the NUG has also been doing from their end of the best with their own networks and their administration. Through their administration and coordination mechanisms as well. But I think what we are now at that stage now already is after 3 months, right? So we are still seeing the aftershock or the smaller earthquakes continue even until like yesterday being reported. So the people on the ground, as much as we are delivering the aid to the people. So we have been delivering the first phase, which is the emergency relief, of course, but also we have already, been delivering also the intermediate or the first phase of the recovery as well, including water pampers, for example, or the temporary toilets or temporary housings, for example. But the challenge that I see now is that international community or the international donors, because they have given to the military junta. So the people are saying that they're not getting the aid from the NEPIDO or from the military authorities. And especially for the areas where the resistance under the resistance administration or the NUG administration areas, it's even more challenging, right? Because the junta intentionally block and weaponize the aid to ensure that aid doesn't reach to those areas where they are attacking, where they continue to be attacking. So I think the weaponization of the aid is very severe, which is something that ASEAN must address. I mean, ASEAN will talk about the earthquake relief or the recovery phase of the need. But ASEAN cannot neglect the over 3.5 million population who had to flee from the military's bombings and artillery shellings, who are not getting their international aid through ASEAN or through the UN. So I think that's the very reason we have been sharing with them the most pragmatic and effective solution that we have been able to do, which can be even far more effective if they join our efforts together. So, for example, like Malaysia could open one hospital in Sagai under the military junta's control area. Just one. I mean, seriously, one temporary hospital, right? What about the other areas? What about the areas under the NUG control or the ERO's control administration? So military junta will, of course, tell them you cannot go into those areas. But the NUG, the EROs are welcoming them. Come to our areas. This is where you can come in, right? So again, it's not like lack of solution. I think the ASEAN itself is not. It's kind of like neglecting. I think it's like ASEAN's on continually neglecting the needs and also the people-led solutions that are effective on the ground. So I think the humanitarian crisis, or even for the earthquake recovery phase, as long as the ASEAN or the international donors only try to funnel their aid or the recovery relief fund through the military junta, they won't be able to address the needs of the people effectively on the ground in any way. And I mean, you can hear more from the people now. The people become so quiet, and also it's because they are disappointed, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't even think of the international aid or the ASEAN aid, not anymore, because the reality is it's not coming to them, even in the very immediate aftermath of the earthquake. So after 3 months, who wants to keep longing for or waiting for the aid from the ASEAN or the international, because they know that it's not coming to them.
The UN has mentioned that the emergency phase of the humanitarian response is now transitioning into early recovery. What does this mean exactly?
This is also another problem, right? Because just like ASEAN, UN is also neglecting the very man-made humanitarian crisis, which is impacting over 3.5 million internally displaced population from the various ethnic regions and dry zone in central area where the military is bombing and like using the like heavy artillery shelling and all of that, right? So why they keep talking about this early recovery? I mean, like, what kind of early recovery are we talking about? Is ASEAN or the UN, are they only going to address the earthquake recovery? I mean, like, what about these 3.5 million IDPs who have even no home to stay or nowhere to run to anymore? So it's been very unfair, and it's been very, I would say, also very like a negligence of their international humanitarian obligation. When it comes to Myanmar crisis, they are intentionally or deliberately like trying to ignore the very most vulnerable population under the military hunters attacks, and instead like when the earthquake happened, as if it gave them a chance to kind of like tell the world that they are addressing the humanitarian crisis, but they are not. They are not addressing the humanitarian crisis. So early recovery, if it is only, when they say early recovery, transitioning into early recovery, it's not even early recovery. In fact, we have been given the early recovery since the 1 month, within 1 month, and after 1 month of the earthquake, even for the earthquake affected communities. Yeah. But now that if UN is saying that now is the transition into early recovery, it is way too late, even for the earthquake. So especially when they don't address the internally displaced people, where the humanitarian aid being intentionally obstructed and weaponized by the junta, they are not doing their job at all. They are not doing their job at all. And they have failed on the people of Myanmar again and again, repeatedly. It's really frustrating.
The military announced a post-quake ceasefire in April, but has continued airstrikes against civilians. Close the Sky is written on your background with an image from Myanmar. Can you explain this campaign?
Yeah. Yes. Close the Sky it's been basically is a campaign that we've been collectively, many of us, CSOs, Myanmar, regional, international, including these like artists and celebrities who are joining the revolution. Everybody is working on calling on the ASEAN and UN to actually impose the comprehensive global arms embargo. That meanings like, all the arms and ammunitions transfer and sale to the military junta must be stopped. But also particularly with this Close the Sky campaign is to stop the aviation fuel sale and transfer and the whole chain support to the Myanmar military junta. Because the crisis now, after the earthquake, now, I mean, like, even before the earthquake, we were already having the like multi or poly crisis already, right? One is the military-made disaster, and then we also have experienced, our people experienced this natural disaster like Cyclone Mocha and Typhoon Yagi last year already, for example, before the earthquake came, no? So we have the political crisis. We also have the humanitarian and human rights crisis, right? Where the human rights violations or the atrocity crimes that Myanmar military has committed has gone beyond what anybody think that they can only like address it to solve it, such as like what the ASEAN thinks that they can do it, which in reality, no one entity can address this alone because it is body crisis. So in this body crisis, what we're even seeing, according to the NUG Ministry of Human Rights, for example, from the earthquake time to the early March, there were already more than 550 airstrikes. And now, as we are already towards end of June, we have seen more airstrikes, and also not only jet fighters being used. There are many other ways that military has tried so hard to really like heavily relying there are attacks on the people from the sky. So that's the very reason this campaign that we have is Close the Sky, because if the international community and the ASEAN can stop the aviation fuel flow to the junta or the other like means that will aid and abet the military junta to further attacks the people from the sky, from the air, then our people suffering will be so much reduced. Whereas the humanitarian crisis we can resolve in our own self-reliable or self-sustainable way in many ways. For example, if there is no fighter jet dropping bombs to the IDP camps, the people can grow. No, they can grow the rice, or they can grow tapioca, they can grow morning glory, they can get the bamboo shoots. So basically, our people can be self-sustainable, even though international community cannot support us to get the humanitarian aid through the border channels. We can still be sustainable. But when the military keeps bombing, people have to keep fleeing, keep hiding. Then we cannot have our own sustainable solution either, where when the ASEAN and the UN cannot also help, or they don't help. So I think that's the huge problem, that the scale of the crisis has already reached to the peak of the polycrisis. The catastrophe is already reached to that polycrisis peak level, and I think that it's a major mistake that ASEAN keep ignoring or try to work together with the Myanmar people, is because Myanmar crisis, all the spillover effects will come immediately to the region, and which we have been seeing already. Even earthquake, look at all the way from Sagaing to Bangkok, Thailand, for example, right? And then we see the smoke pollution problem from Myanmar side will come to Thailand side right away. The people will flee to Thailand because of the airstrikes, or because of the forced conscription of the military junta. So people don't have a place in their own country. Then they will flee. Flee to where? They will, of course, flee into the neighboring countries, which is the ASEAN member states in particular. So I think it's something, this Myanmar crisis will, as long as the ASEAN cannot work with the NUG and EROs and the civil society and keep the solution at the center of the people rather than at the center of the military junta in Naypyidaw, they will also be suffering the spillover effects in their countries as well. Like the lack of human security in Myanmar will actually equate and will cross over to the neighboring countries and go beyond. So the regional peace and stability of ASEAN really depends on the sustainable long-term solution that Myanmar people can actually achieve from this people's revolution. So that's why they really need to support the Myanmar people's revolution.